Hey, shalom everyone. This is Amir Tsarfati, and I wanted to give you some important news that I don't think I can wait until Tuesday with all of that because things are going on really fast here. So I'm going to wait for a few minutes until you guys will connect, and then I want to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about the return of the Bibas children and then their mom. Of course, I want you to know exactly what happened. Then I'm going to talk about the averted terror attack, mega terror attack that was supposed to happen Friday morning, Israel time. And I will talk about the release of the last living hostages of phase one and what are the possibilities for the coming weeks. Okay, so please, once you connect, press the share button because this one is going to be super important and super critical for you to understand, because a lot of you are quite confused about what is really going on here in Israel. So, and trust me, I mean, the roller coaster is just unbelievable. From mourning to joy to shock. And I mean, there's so many things. So I feel like I want to pray first, and then I will address these three important topics. So, Lord, I ask that you will allow me to share with people the things that are important for them to hear, the truth and the unfiltered one that they probably won't hear anywhere else. But Lord, I also pray that you will allow us to draw from all of this encouragement and maybe even burden to pray for this nation, for your people. As Moses said, remember, these are your people, as he said that in Exodus 33. So, Father, we ask that you will allow us now to understand what's going on and to pray for your people. In Yeshua's name, amen. Okay, so, folks, again, shalom. This is Amir Tsarfati. These are breaking news. This is an important update, and I really hope that you will press the share button right now and share it with people. I want to address three important things that took place in the last 3 days, and maybe even talk to you about the possibilities for the coming weeks as far as hostages in Gaza. So let's talk first about the return of the dead hostages on Thursday. Okay, so we kind of knew that the Bibas kids and their mom Shiri are going to come back in coffins, and of course we also had another hostage that came back, an older person that came back dead. But as far as Shiri and her two kids, I've been trying to hint for the longest time via my Telegram messages and also on video. I've been trying to hint to you all that we kind of know that they're dead. But the reason why I didn't say it explicitly is because no one wanted to take the risk that we might be even in 1% wrong. But starting from the late October of 2023, we already received information that they're no longer alive, and that is exactly why they were not part of the deal in November of 2023. And remember, in November 23, it was mostly about the elderly, the women, and the children. and they were not even included, and no one insisted in Israel that they will be on the list. And the reason is we wanted to release as many people as we can that are alive, and we already knew then that they were killed. What is shocking to us today is not that they are coming back dead, which again, we kind of knew that they are dead. The autopsy, the forensic inspection of the remains of the two kids and of Shiri last night exposed unimaginable death. Believe it or not, but a week after October 7th, before Israel entered into Gaza, way before, a week after October 7th, Kataib al-Mujahideen, this is a Salafi jihadi organization. You know, there's about 12 different terrorist organizations that took part of October 7th, not just Hamas. Hamas is the main one, but there were so many. And they kidnapped Shiri and her kids while Shiri was barefoot. They literally took them from the house on Shabbat morning. And within a week, they couldn't take anymore the crying of the babies and of the mom. In their satanic mind, they try to craft not just how to kill the babies and the mom, but also how to present it to the world once this whole thing will come to light. So what they did is the following thing. First of all, with their bare hands, they strangled all three of them. It was without any weapon even. But then they grabbed rocks and they mutilated the bodies of the three of them. And they made it in a way that not a single bone would remain intact. And the reason they did that is so later on they can claim that an Israeli air raid caused the collapse of the house. So they needed to prove that something hit them. But the way they did it was so stupid, because even when a house collapsing, the way they broke the bones of the skull and the hands and the femur and the legs and the feet, and they did it that only a person can do it to another one. I posted a whole long post on how the post-mortem examination found it. Everything in the killing and the murdering of these babies and their mom, and knowing how crazy they are, they most likely had her watch it first and then killed her. Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir were strangled with bare hands, and then those animals used rocks. By the way, this video will be restricted. I can see that already. And unless you share it right now, no one will see it, because the algorithm of Facebook is already working hard. So they were defaced, but beyond that, every single bone was destroyed. Then they took knives and it's hard to describe what happened there. Now, the doctors in the National Institute for Forensic Medicine, these are the doctors that saw all the horrific October 7th victims. So it has to be so bad that even they were shocked. It had to have been, they said we've never seen anything like that. I mean, they've seen burnt bodies, they've seen a lot. They have not seen kids and mom killed like that before. So it's not just like we received the Bibas family dead. These animals butchered them in ways that even, okay, whenever we call them animals, we actually do harm to the animals. No animal does that to another. And then, already then in November of 23, they started leaking the rumor as if Israeli air raids caused the death of them, when they knew what they did. So again, the information about their death was already with us. But what shocked all of us in the last 48 hours is how they killed them. And of course, they try to fool us. So they sent us a Gazan woman's remains instead of Shiri. I mean, what were they thinking? But it's all part of a well-planned psychological terror. You have to understand, this is who they are. They're monsters. You don't live next to these people. They have to be gone. But this is what happened with Shiri and the kids. Let me tell you what was supposed to happen Friday morning, and thankfully did not happen. The media doesn't report that. There's a gag order, so reporters that know about it, they don't talk about it. But let me tell you what happened. First of all, Iran smuggled explosives and devices from Iran via Iraq to Syria, from Syria to Jordan, from Jordan through the Jordan Valley to northern Samaria, to the hands of the terrorists. So that one we know. But now let me tell you what happened. A group of terrorists managed to, under the radar of the Israeli intelligence, managed to infiltrate into the Tel Aviv area, south of Tel Aviv, the city of Bat Yam and the city of Holon. And I posted on Telegram videos of the terrorists, okay? I mean, they dressed like Israelis, and they boarded some public transportation buses and some of the light train carts. And they planted there in plastic bags explosives and also a watch, analog watch, that's supposed to, that was set to explode the following morning. The following morning, Friday morning, busy day, preparation for Shabbat, buses are packed, the train is packed. And they tell you that we found 2 explosives that did not explode, and in 3 buses they did explode, and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something, folks. And by the way, I can already see that Facebook is restricting this video. Share, please share. So the total number is 15 buses. And apart from that, there were supposed to be 5 suicide bombers that should explode within the light train. And all of that was supposed to distract all the Israeli emergency services so they can then have another group of terrorists invading from northern Samaria into Israeli towns and villages and butchering and kidnapping people there. I mean, it was supposed to be October 7th on steroids. And the only reason we managed to thwart this or avert that is not because we were so great. It's not because our intelligence worked greatly. It's not because of anything like that. It's because the stupid terrorists, because of the analog watches, they mixed AM with PM, and instead of the charges exploding at 9 a.m. the following day, it exploded already at 9 p.m. the night before, where the buses were already empty and parked. In one of the cases, at least one bus, the driver was told that there is a bag there. He got all the passengers off the bus. He drove it to the parking area. He got off the bus, and then it exploded. Now, again, the explosive was supposed to explode the following morning. So because of 3 explosives that exploded prematurely, we stopped all traffic of Israeli public transportation, and all drivers started searching their buses, and we found so many more. Same thing with the light train, with the explosive, and we caught some people that were involved in all of this. That's why we know exactly the whole plan. A lot of people don't talk about it. In fact, we already moved on with today's release of 6 hostages, and nobody talks about what would happen Thursday night and was supposed to happen Friday morning. But a mega terror attack was thwarted by the grace of God, and not thanks to anyone in Israel. And that was Hamas. Hamas is talking on one hand with us about hostages, and on the other hand wants to take more somewhere else. That's why we can't live next to them. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, and again, guys, this video is right now being restricted because of the content. So unless you share it right now, no one will see it. And the last thing I want to talk about is the release of 6 hostages today. It was beautiful. These are the last 6 living hostages from phase 1. And next week, we're supposed to get another 4 coffins of 4 other hostages whom we know they're no longer alive. And that's it. Phase 1 will be concluded. And you're probably asking, so what's next? Probably you're asking, why do we even release that many terrorists? Well, first of all, if you follow me on Telegram, you know that we started releasing disproportionate number of terrorists against Israelis already in the 1950s. And it went through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, the 90s, and the worst, I think, was in 2011 when we released for one soldier 1,029 terrorists, among which Yahya Sinwar, the architect of October 7th, was. And so we've normalized this type of thing already in the 50s, and on behold, now we're paying for it. Now, when a country is willing to pay thousands of terrorists for few of its own, it's inviting more kidnapping, because they know that we're willing to pay that much. They know that we're negotiating. They know that we care so much about our people that the best thing to do is kidnap them. That's why they kidnapped 251 people on October 7th. And then they recalculate their route and they realize, oh, we have too many, actually. It's actually a headache. We have to release those that we don't really need. So they released in phase 1 for a much smaller number of prisoners. They released over 100 people. But these are the people they didn't want to stay with, the children and the women and the elderly ones at that time. And they kept 140 something. Now, of course, Israel was able to find a few alive, to rescue some. We found a few bodies of hostages that were murdered by Hamas. But all in all, when we entered the deal, phase one was supposed to release 34 living hostages, living and dead hostages, and of course what is left now is 59, of which we know that 36 at least are dead. So there's only 24 that are alive, if maybe even less than that. So they left them last because these are Israeli soldiers, for the most part, 19 of them. And so now phase two is, and let me explain why I don't believe phase two is going to materialize. Phase two, basically, Hamas says, we will give you everyone back, everyone. But in return, we want three things. We want all the Israeli troops out of Gaza, including the Philadelphia corridor, the security perimeter, everyone out. We want to stay in power, and we want Gaza to be reconstructed. Now let me explain something. If all the Israelis will leave, Hamas will recover, because once you leave Philadelphia corridor, weapons will start flowing again from Egypt. Second, if you leave the perimeter without Israeli soldiers, then once again they can come all the way to the fence, which is hundreds of yards away from the Israeli settlements that have been already attacked. And number three, there is no way Israel is going to leave Hamas in power, because Hamas already said they're going to do it again. Now, I don't know if you understand, but Hamas will never, ever give up all the hostages, because that's the insurance policy for Hamas to stay in power. They're not stupid. They know exactly that the minute all the assets they're holding, all the Israeli soldiers, all the dead and alive ones will be brought back, Israel would then destroy them. They know that. The only reason Israel is not destroying them right now is because we have living hostages there. And they know that. They are not planning on giving. They will drag their feet and they will say, oh, now you didn't do this, so we're not returning this one. You didn't do that, we're not returning that one. And it's going to be a nightmare for months and years. We know that. We know who we are dealing with. Unless you put the hammer down on their head. Unless you leave them no choice but to release the prisoners. Unless you stop all humanitarian aid. Unless you completely unless you do something differently and you leave them no options and you make sure everyone around knows that there is no more Hamas, they will never, ever give up. Never. You know, during World War II, even during the Holocaust, in Nazi Germany, believe it or not, there were hundreds of Germans that actually helped saving Jewish people. In Nazi Germany, that killed 6 million Jews. There were, in Germany, quite a few that helped saving Jews. In Gaza, not even one. We offer them $5 million if they hand hostages that they're keeping in their homes, or if they give us information. Not even one step forward. Not even one. They are worse than the Nazis. These are monsters. That's who they are. Phase two can never happen because Israel will never let them stay in power. And phase two will never happen also because we know they'll never really release all the prisoners. Now, they're going to try and use psychological warfare. And I'm telling you, starting from next week, every day or a few times a week, they will release videos of our hostages so they can push the button and cause the Israeli public to demand everyone back. Of course, what is the cost? leaving Hamas in power. It's not going to happen because Netanyahu's government will fall. There will be chaos in Israel, and the Israelis are not ready for that. There is a small minority, and of course there's the families, which I totally understand them. But no one can afford Hamas to stay in power. It's out of the question. So what Israel is trying to do now is to prolong phase 1. We're going to tell them, look, phase 2 cannot happen. But if you want, give us more living hostages and we will release more terrorists. I mean, again, it's not the greatest thing to release more terrorists, but again, we can live with that as long as we know that the option to destroy Hamas is there. And so the next phase is a mind game. Whoever blinks first is going to lose here. President Trump is on our side. We're going to try and see how he's going to handle his Gaza plans with Egypt and Jordan and with the Saudis. He just said that he's going to give us good news very soon. President Trump is using his leverage to change their minds, to think out of the box. So let's see what happens there. One thing is for sure, nobody in the new U.S. administration is even willing to think about Hamas staying in power. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's next. But one thing is for sure, phase 2 cannot be implemented. We're going to try and drag phase 1 because we know that Hamas has to be destroyed. And we're not going to limit ourselves by signing a deal about keeping them in power. It's not going to happen. So just as nobody would sign a deal to leave Hitler in power, to leave the Nazis in power, nobody can do the same thing with these monsters. These they're not even monsters. They're demons. And again, they're raising the next generation to be exactly like that. If you watch all of my Telegram posts, you will see it for yourself. And by the way, genocide, famine, the markets are open there. The food bloggers are already posting videos there. They fooled you. They fooled everyone. There was never a famine there. There was never a genocide there. You know, genocide is when you have less people at the end, not more. Gaza now, the big channel of Hamas, just said that there's actually more people now than there were in the beginning of the war. There are more babies now than before. They fool the whole world, and the world believed them because the world loves the lie. That's it. So I want you to share this video with people so they understand what happened to the Bibas family, so they understand the unbelievable miracle that took place in Israel in the last 48 hours, and also that they understand what's next now that phase 1 is coming to an end. Share this video. Thank you, and please pray for Israel. Our nation is the left, the progressive left, has destroyed every part in this country. They're still holding the fortress of the judicial branch, of the deep state, of the media, and they're brainwashing people. It's sad to see that. Very sad. But we need prayers. And only God can really help us. And honestly, He needs to help us saving ourselves from ourselves. I mean, it's hard to see how the media is doing exactly the same thing it did in 2011 when they pushed and pushed and pushed and every newscast, every day. Today is 400 days since Gilad Shalit was imprisoned by Hamas, blah, blah, blah. And they pushed us to release 1,029 terrorists just for one soldier. And then one of those 1,029 was Yahya Sinwar, who pledged to do an October 7th so he can release all of his friends from the Israeli prisons. I wonder the architect of which future massacre we just released right now. and it's the media. And they brainwash people. That's why I call them the Medianites. And this is why, even though my eyes hurt, even though I don't sleep, but I insist on an alternative source of news, because they are evil. So please do me a favor, share this video with as many as you can.